Today, we're going to talk about training tips that every professional archer does that you can learn from as well, because obviously how you train is going to massively impact how you progress and how you improve towards scoring better, grouping better, and just generally improving your archery. So thank you for joining me again today, Mike, for this. I think this is going to be a good one.
Looking forward to it.
So the kind of first thing that I wanted to start with that might sound a little bit basic, but is really, really important. I see this as a really big distinction between a lot of even maybe county or regional level archers, some national level archers even, and competitive pro level archers, is when pro level archers go to every single training session, they have a very concrete goal, really obvious what they're going to be working on. So maybe what are your thoughts on that to kind of kick off?
Yes, you hit the nail on the head there. What the headline number is always, oh, how many arrows have I shot? That's always the thing people talk about. It's what they can see on the thumbnail of the video. It's the headline thing. But there's no point just chucking arrows, as we call it. You know, if you're just slinging arrows, you are sadly wasting your time. There's going to be some physical, biological, you're going to probably get stronger. You're probably going to improve your stamina, but you're not going to progress forward. And I think you're right. That's the biggest difference. It's one thing to go to the club and just shoot arrows. It'll help you get you'll get somewhere by doing that. But as we've touched on before, unless you're going there with purpose, focus, and you have clear what your outcome for that day is, and you know, it can be a range of things. It can be technique, it can be mental, it can be, maybe it is a stamina thing, but as long as there's purpose there, that's what's really going to make you break into those higher ranking positions.
Yeah. Because how often, I fell into this trap a lot, how often do you think when you were training, did you kind of go through the motions a little bit? Because you'd planned maybe 300 arrows for the day, and you get there and you're like, okay, I'm going to do 100 arrows blank boss, then I'm going to do some target, then I'm going to score a round or something. How often do you remember doing that? Quite a lot, right?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest risk of being a professional archer. No, I'm going to say professional sportsman, is that you can just fall into a routine. And yes, on the outside, you've ticked all of the boxes. And actually this week I was talking to the Sri Lankan national cricket team, and I actually gave them this speech about being a professional sportsman, about how the biggest risk is, yeah, you've done everything. You've ticked off the boxes. You're going to show it to the coach. But have you actually engaged? Have you actually tried to refine? You know, they had so many bowls that they had to do, so many fast bowls. But I was like, are you going through the motions, or are you truly trying to improve every single bowl that you do? So yeah, it's not an archery thing. It is just a professional sports person thing, especially when you've been doing it 1 year, 2 year, 10 years. You know, it's hard to keep that focus alive, but that's the difference between making progress or standing still, or dare I say it, regressing.
And what would be some good examples of goals that people could pick? Because I think, like you mentioned, the arrow volume one is really tempting. Oh, I'm going to shoot 100 arrows today. Really easy to see whether you've done that or not. What would be some maybe better ones for people working on like technique areas and stuff like that?
So it could be, today I'm going to work on having a clean or aggressive release, or today I know my shoulder sometimes is creeping up when I'm taking too long. So maybe today I'm going to go there, and every shot I'm putting that focus into my shoulder. I'm making sure my shoulder is down, or I'm making sure I have forward pressure towards the target. So it can be simple technique things like that, or totally different, can be a mental thing. I'm going to say that every shot I'm going to go through my mental routine. I'm going to go through my phrases, and it doesn't matter whether I'm shooting blank boss or 70, I'm going to stick to my routine. And that's the number one goal. Not the grouping, not the scoring, not the timing maybe. And it's deciding what it is, because your priority every day can't be, I'm going to try and score as much as I can. You know, that only goes so far.
Yeah. It's kind of a given, isn't it? At some point that, you know, you're going to try and do that, but you need some process to get you there. Quickly, there are 2 more ways that I can help you improve your archery. If you go to onlinearcheryacademy.com and click Become a Member, you can join my exclusive membership community where you can ask questions for Q&As, get exclusive videos, become part of a community of archers worldwide, and get loads of tips and tricks and guides in all these sections here that you can't get anywhere else. If you don't want to do anything paid at the moment, that's fine as well, and you can actually get my free email newsletter by just simply putting your email address in on the front page of onlinearcheryacademy.com. Now back to the video. The second thing I wanted to mention that I think is quite a big difference between like top level archers and people that are kind of rising up as well is visualization. I think this is used probably by all of the top 10 archers in the world, and probably like 90% of the top 100 or something.
Yes.
Probably use visualization of some sort, but I think maybe it's a little bit intimidating to start, or it's a little bit hard to know whether you're doing the right thing with it. So I think a lot of archers that are just beginning, they think like, I'm not sure what the point is, like, is it worth me doing that? I'm not that good yet anyway. So maybe you can talk a little bit about those kind of objections of people going like, I'm just a beginner, like what use is visualization? Or I'm just like an intermediate level archer. Why should I visualize what I'm doing? I think that would be, interesting.
And I think you hit the nail on the head there with that phrase, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'll do it when I get good. I stumble across this all the time, and I have to point out to people, well, maybe this is what you need to do to get that good. Or I have to point out to them, well, actually, you've made quite a lot of progress. You are actually coming into this category, because I think we're all guilty of leaving things. Yeah, I'll leave that until I'm good. Well, maybe you need to do that to become good. But yeah, visualization is something I did on a daily basis. I won't lie though, I found it hard. I found it struggle. I think for the first sort of 6 months of me doing it, if you'd have asked me whether I was good at it, whether I was successful, I would have had big doubts over it. And it was only because I was still at work at that point. I was still had a professional career, not sport. And that's what I'd done in my lunch break. So because that time was like forced upon me, that's what kept me my routine of doing it. Because to be honest with you, I don't know if I would have done without it, because I didn't feel like I was good at it. I felt like it was a struggle.
Yeah, you kind of felt like time-wise it was a little bit of a luxury maybe, because you've got the other training.
Yeah, I could easily find that if I didn't have that lunch break where I couldn't do anything else, I probably would have found a reason to go do something else instead. I probably wouldn't have prioritized it. I'm just being honest. But by the end, it was a valuable tool and is a valuable tool. But I know that a lot of people do struggle. I've heard people, it's a regular occurrence. It doesn't come easy. So those of you out there, if you think I've tried it and it didn't really work for me, no, you're not on your own. That's the most common outcome rather than you being a rarity.
Yeah. And to help with that a little bit, because I struggled with exactly the same thing for many years, where I'd maybe set aside time to, like literally sit or lie down and visualize X number of arrows. But I really struggled with that. When I linked it to the training that I was already doing and reduced how many arrows I was kind of demanding of myself, I found it a lot more helpful. So for anyone that's tried this before already, but they haven't tried it linked to the training, what I'd suggest is maybe rather than saying I'm going to sit down and visualize 36 arrows, that's pretty hard.
I couldn't do that.
No,
that's the honest truth.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear. Yeah.
It's really difficult. Rather than saying that, what I would encourage you to do instead is, before my training session today, I'm going to warm up physically. Hopefully you're doing that. Warm up physically. And then just before I start shooting, I'm just going to visualize 3 arrows of what I'm going to focus on today. So this ties back into what we were just talking about with the goal setting, right? So I'm just going to visualize 3 arrows. I'm just going to visualize going through the shot, working on my bow shoulder, keeping that low, the feeling that I want, how it feels on the raising the bow, how it feels during the shot, all that kind of stuff, just on 3 shots. And then maybe if you want to add in more, one kind of little technique I really liked was on the walk back from the target, maybe just squeeze in another little visualization of something, that you're doing. So that way it doesn't feel too kind of burdensome, and it actually helps you focus a bit more, because one of the biggest improvements I found with the visualization was specifically when I would have a rest day and then I'd come back to shooting. It's almost like after every rest day, I would take a whole day, sometimes even 2 days, to get back to where I was on the previous, the day before the rest day. I'd kind of feel like I'm playing catch up.
Yep.
But once I started visualizing, before I'd come back after that rest day, I'd visualize, okay, what I'm going to work on today, what was I doing last week, what did I learn from it? and then kind of warm yourself up mentally. It was a real good kind of intro into what I was doing, and then I could improve a lot faster. So rather than thinking of visualization as it's going to take too much time, or I'm not sure like if I can spend the time with it, it's going to make all the rest of your practice a lot more effective because of that kind of goal setting that we were talking about as well. So I think this is kind of where people can really improve with it, because I think, like you said as well, people maybe it's kind of too difficult to kind of fit into your life otherwise. If you just like try and plan a session of it, it's kind of quite difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, or the other thing is putting it in when you first wake up in the morning, when you last go to bed, having it a part of another routine, so that it's sort of made it obvious to you as, this is when you normally do it. But for me, I'd often find if I could do a head-to-head match in my mind, if I could visualize a complete match, I really did consider that a success. I found that to be so not a complete qualifying round, just to be clear. But if you could do a match and then treat that as one exercise, I think that's great. Then if you can do another one, fantastic. But that's a reasonable period of focus.
Yeah, definitely. Before we get started, if you want step-by-step guidance from me to improve your technique, you need to check out my video courses. Go to onlinearcheryacademy.com, click Explore the Courses for a special discount. Now let's get into the video. And then that kind of moves us on to the third thing that I wanted to mention as well, which I think you've probably got a lot of experience with as well, which is clicker drills. I think this is something pretty much every top archer does as well, and I think you've got a kind of few favourites, haven't you, of kind of clicker drills that you like to do?
For me, because I think it's because I spent 10 years as an international compound archer, and I was all about the aim, all about the holding still. Then when I come into recurve, the movement through the clicker, reacting to the clicker, that was always my weakest area, linked in with my release, because the clicker and the release, they were really partnership, and that didn't really work. But I remember when the first coach got me just to stand at 5 meters and actually pull up, expand, click, and not shoot. That was chronically hard. Absolutely, I cannot stress to you. I don't know how long it took to be able to have it go click and not shoot. It would have been I might have failed the first 15 times. That's quite possible. I don't want to downplay. And this was already at a point. At this point, I was already someone who had qualified first at a world championship. I qualified first at a recurve indoor world championship. So I was already at a competent level. But I want to stress, I then found it incredibly hard to not shoot. And I think that's my first proper training session with this coach, and I think we had 4 hours of me shooting, trying to click, not shoot, come down, or even, I think for the majority of the session, it would have been click, expand some more, then shoot. And I found it incredibly hard. I didn't think it was particularly beneficial. And then 2 days later, we had our first Olympic selection shoot, and I'd done a 672 or 673, and that was the national record, and I had my personal best. So I equaled my personal best. So there was an immediate, okay, maybe there's something, maybe there's something to this, because at the end of the session, I wouldn't have honestly thought that there was any real benefit. I was, working with a new coach, and I wanted to, take his advice. He was giving me his time, and I wanted to, and that's what he recommended. And I think he recommended it to a point. But yeah, so for me, I want to stress to people, it's really difficult. I wasn't good at it, but it did seem to have a beneficial effect within days.
And was that, when you started it, was that blank bail, or was that distance, target face? What was that?
Oh no, that was a blank target at 3 meters.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'd have been aiming at a target face, I would have been next level difficulty.
Yeah.
So that's it. Even a competent international archer, just being able to have it go click at a blank target and not shoot took 45 minutes of work.
Yeah. I definitely recommend, if anyone watching this hasn't tried, start at the blank bail. And then once you get competent at that, progress, probably like you did as well, progress from blank to maybe 30 meters, then 30 meters with the target face, then 30 meters with a smaller target face, then eventually 70 meters with the normal target face. Because, as you were describing, it's a lot harder the further you go.
If we'd have tried to do that, we'd have just spent, if we'd have tried to do it at 70 meters, we'd have just spent the day shooting arrows into the grass.
Yeah.
Because there's so many that it'd be a little bit of a collapse and it would have been a complete mess. I can't imagine how unproductive it would have been trying to do that at a target face. So yeah, you're very good to bring that up.
No, I think that's really good clicker drill. I think that one really is one of my favorites as well. And then it's very similar, but a slightly different version of doing that, which I saw Coach Lee, Kizik Lee, did in America often with his resident athletes, which was essentially everyone's clickers at 70 meters normally is, just a little bit further out than they are at blank bail. So maybe for me, it was 3 to 4 mil, something like that. And often what I would do is I'd move my clicker in at blank bail and then move my clicker out at 70 meters. For all of the athletes that he was coaching that were at the training center, he kept their clickers, he told them to keep the clicker at the same place. So therefore, when they're at blank bail, it would click early and they would then have to continue coming into full draw into where they should feel that they're actually at full draw and then expand and then shoot still. So it was kind of a way of conditioning them to not base the full draw position purely off the clicker, but more off their like bone structure and how they feel with their like alignment. So that was something I never really did up until that point, but I think is a really good drill and something I'd recommend to a lot of people now as well.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I want to stress, I would have found that so hard.
It's really hard. Yeah, really difficult drill. Speaking of drills as well, the next thing I wanted to mention is timing drills. So this is something that I think is really hard, really difficult to ignore the aiming aspect. And I think people get caught up in feeling like they're throwing the arrows down range a little bit. Kind of what we were saying earlier, where you don't want to just throw the arrows at blank bail and this kind of thing. Sometimes, if you have a specific goal, which is, for example, I'm going to work on my timing and my rhythm, there is a time and a place to say, okay, above all else, the rhythm is the thing that we're working on.
You mean grip and rip?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know what you meant when you said timing.
Yeah.
Timing train drills, grip and rip. Okay, please continue there.
So yeah, the grip and rip is essentially just coming in to full draw, really kind of going for it and pulling hard against the face and then essentially shooting really quick with an aggressive release. Some other timing and rhythm drills that I really like, that I really recommend, is 90-second drill, 6 arrows in 90 seconds. It's kind of a Ron Seal drill. So it's basically just you set a timer for 90 seconds, 6 arrows. It feels way too fast at the start, and anyone that's going to try this will be like, this is pointless. It gets better. And what you'll probably find is you end up scoring maybe higher than you do when you've got more time, which is kind of funny when that happens.
I had never thought of calling these timing drills. In my mind, I hadn't sort of given them that category, so that's really good. We've done all of these things, but I didn't I hadn't sort of grouped them all together as the same sort of group. So that's very handy because these are all important things that all top archers do to the best of our knowledge,
Yeah, and setting that time aside to work on these things is really important because you can work on your full draw position and it's really objective and you can maybe get an overhead camera and all that kind of stuff. But if you've got a great position at full draw and then you hold it for 12 seconds and then collapse, not great. So, the holding it part for too long, timing drill will help that. The collapsing, the clicker drill will help that. The release, the clicker drill will help that. So yeah, these are really good drills to do as well.
Absolutely. And all a challenge. We all keep wanting to tell people, don't think these are going to be easy. No. You might totally fail at these to start with. Just persevere. It's worth it. Yeah.
And that kind of brings us on nicely to periodizing, what I would call periodizing blank bail versus target face. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about this and kind of flesh that out for people that don't quite know what I mean, which is how much time you spend at blank bail versus shooting on a target and scoring. Because I think maybe a lot of club archers rock up, shoot target face, stop, go home, and there's not really...
And that's exactly what I would have done. And I would say for the first... If I just talk about my recurve career, I'd say for the first 2 or 3 years of my recurve career, that is all I'd done. I looked at blank target as something I'd done once in a blue moon when I had a specific reason to. But it was not part of my training. I would turn up at the club, do 2 or 3 ends, and then of sighters, then maybe I'd score, but more on off, I'd just shoot. I was definitely focused on numbers, possibly even more than quality. But that's the truth. That was the driving factor, is tonight I'm going to shoot 200 arrows.
Yeah.
That was and when you're holding down a day job or you're doing studies, it is hard to do 200 arrows. It does take concise, focused effort. But if you get totally distracted by it. So I was not into the blank target shooting at all. And it took just the obvious thing of just witnessing other people train. The more we had other teams come and train with us, or when we're at competitions, I noticed that on the practice days, no matter what, the Korean team particularly, because they're always the superstars we're watching, they would always start with like 50 to 100 arrows on the blank boss. Then they'd go off to targets and do their regular training. And 80% of the time, it always looked like they finished with another 50 to 100 arrows on the blank boss. And that was when I was like, okay, this is not something you do as a one-off exercise. This is should be a part of your daily training. And for some club archers, that's hard, but it can just mean that you just don't aim at the target face. You shoot above the target face if we're talking about indoors. Yeah. You don't have to aim at the target. You can, or if I'm shooting at, if everyone at the club has got 3-spot faces, and I'll just aim between the faces and I'll have a few ends at least. But yeah, I think starting and ending your session each time, thinking about the shot, thinking about the process, not the outcome, not the sight marks, not the score, not the grouping, just thinking about the process is the best way for you to continue your development. Yeah. And it's about making that progress. So making sure you've shot focused before you start means you're getting the best quality training. And then, especially if training hasn't gone well, or if training is windy, coming back to the blank target to again focus on the technique, it just lays the best foundation for you to be able to build upon your technique session after session, month after month, year after year.
Yeah. And that's a really good point about the wind you mentioned. Some people think that...
The destroyer of techniques.
Yeah. Some people think that like you should always shoot in the wind, and if you don't shoot in the wind, then like it's bad because, you should kind of get used to shooting in terrible conditions and all that kind of stuff. I actually used to have that view, and I have a kind of different view now, which is really breeze or light wind is very useful to shoot in to develop your aiming off skills. Strong wind and gusty wind destroys, as you just said.
It's corrosive. It just erodes you as an archer. And yes, we all have to do it, so you need to have some practice in it. But if you do it day after day, week after week, because I know there's some archery clubs they're just on the side of a hill and they're always windy. I don't think I could become a national champion at a club like that, because you're always just having your technique, your routine, your consistency, your timing, always just being eroded away.
Yeah, just completely battered. So I think that's really good.
There's going to be no quality there.
Yeah.
You have to have quality practice to make the best long term to develop.
Yeah. And if that is the case for you, if you're watching this thinking, my practice range is always really windy, then you can increase the percentage of the blank bail shooting that you do to kind of compensate for all of that battering around. And this is something top archers will do. What I mentioned about the periodization is typically in the winter, when you've got a technical phase, a higher percentage of your training will be blank bail. So let's make up a number. Let's say 60% blank bail in the winter. And then as you kind of progress through to the summer season and you kind of go into competitions, maybe you'll go from 60% being blank bail and 40-ish% being target. And then you'll go maybe the other way. 60% is target, 40% is blank bail. And you'll kind of change this through the year. And those numbers are not absolute. I just made them up. Some people do more, some people do less. But it's that varying it depending on what you need to achieve and how windy it's been, how many competitions you've done, all that kind of thing is really, really important. That brings us on.
But I think if we surveyed our viewers now, if they put in the comments how much blank target they do, I would imagine that 90% of the viewers watching this never do any blank target. That would be my guess. Maybe I'm out of date and that's not the case. But please, let us know in the comments.
Interesting, yeah.
Definitely. Is this a part of your routine, or did you go 10 years without doing it and now you do? I just don't know how common it is. as soon as you drop away from like national team level. I don't know if it's got out there into the archery community or not. Let's hope it has.
Even just the number of arrows it takes, because I remember talking to someone about this, and I said like, oh, I'll start a day's training and I'll maybe do like 75, 100 blank bail to warm up, and then they're like,
and then it's time to go home.
And they're like, well, that's my whole session, like, because not everyone has that much time to shoot that much, understandably. So yeah, it would be really interesting. Yeah, let us know in the comments what percentage you shoot at blank bail. And then that brings us on nicely to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is bow training. Every top archer does it. Almost every intermediate archer does it, or knows that they should do it and doesn't quite do it. Because no matter who you ask, everyone hates it, but everyone knows it's really good. And then again, I think there's this thing of, oh, I'm not good enough to need to do it yet because strength isn't the limiting factor, it's the technique, or it's knowing how to do the technique. That kind of thing is actually the issue. Like, oh, it's a skill issue at the moment, so I'm not ready to do bow training yet. But yeah, how would you kind of view that? Would you recommend bow training to almost everyone, or what do you think there?
I can never see a scenario where it's going to be detrimental to your performance. And even if it's your first week of archery, the stronger you get, the faster you'll be able to develop. So there's no downsides. Of course, we feel like it becomes more of a priority when you are a competitive archer and you're trying to progress in your poundage. But if you were stronger when you began, it would have helped you with learning your technique as well. So there's no downside. The only downside is the time and the commitment it takes. And that's normally what we get that commitment more from competitive archers than we do from club archers. But I don't think there's any negatives there, is there? Apart from the time and commitment. But if you've got the time and the commitment, it's always going to help you develop faster.
Yeah. And I think the only caveat I would put, or the only kind of warning I would put, is depending on how much you shoot or what poundage you shoot, if some people immediately jump to bow training with their standard weight bow, there could be injury risk, like potential there.
Okay.
So I'd always recommend maybe like doing bow training at a bow weight that you can really get good non-injury prone technique. If there's some sort of a issue, maybe you've got a shoulder issue, or maybe your bow shoulder's high and you just can't get it down. I think this is where some people get a bit caught up because they think, my bow feels a bit heavy, I can't quite do the technique that I want, so if I do bow training then I'm going to make that even worse. And they then think that there's no benefit in doing bow training at a lower weight than what they're shooting. But actually, that's like really, really beneficial. So for example, if you're shooting 35 pounds and your bow shoulder's a bit high, you can still shoot your normal arrows and still work on your bow shoulder, but maybe get a 25-pound bow and do your bow training with that bow and really work on getting it super solid with that 25-pound bow, holding it, doing some full draw holds, getting that endurance in there, and then you can progressively overload that lighter weight bow training bow to then get to your actual normal weight one. I think that's kind of undervalued sometimes with bow training.
I think that's a fair comment. Yeah, absolutely.
And then the kind of final tip that I wanted to kind of come on to today is what I would call cross training. So I think a lot of people, obviously, if they're shooting a certain distance in competition, they'll shoot that in training. Especially now that the theta has been removed from competitions, a lot of people just only shoot like one thing, basically. So, 70 meters for recurves, 50 meters for compounds. But I think the benefits of cross training, whether that's field archery, very useful, I think, for a lot of people. I didn't do that much of it. I only actually did one field archery competition. I think I wish I kind of did more of that because I think that would have been beneficial. But just shooting different distances, different target face sizes, different target face appearances and stuff like that, that kind of cross training I think is really beneficial, and something you see still happens a lot in Korea where they shoot different distances. They shoot 30 meters, they shoot 50 meters. They still have theta competitions, obviously. But in particular, I don't know how you view this, Mike, but 30 meters, for me now, I view 30 meters as a real great distance to work on technique. And I know this is something that a lot of Korean archers kind of use. Is that what you kind of think that as well?
Yeah,
right?
It is, because it's not as extreme as blank target.
Yeah.
but the gold is big enough that it takes an awful lot of pressure off the aim. So it's a good halfway point. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think the 30 meters, that's just a great example, because like you were saying as well, I mean, the gold's big, and then also angle wise, for example, if you're working on your bow shoulder, you can do that at blank bail, work on that, that's great, flat angle. If you go straight to 70 meters with that extra angle, it's a lot harder to keep your bow shoulder in the right position. But 30 is kind of like a little bit of elevation, a little bit more than 18 meters, but it's basically still flat, so it's not too difficult. So kind of like you said, yeah, I really like 30. I know a lot of archers really like 50 as well. 50 is very similar to 70 in terms of like what you're going to score, but it feels quite different mentally sometimes depending on the the arrangement of the target faces. But encouraging people to use different distances like that and really kind of make their training a bit broader, I think really helps a lot of people. Just to kind of finish up on that discussion, something that maybe a lot of people watching this might not have done. What's your experience with training at 90 meters? How did you find that? Do you find that helped your 70 meters?
Yes, 90 meters certainly makes you, I want to just say more aware. I love 90 meter training for getting people to one of the simplest tasks. If I want someone to maintain their focus and their form after the shot, send them off to 90 meters and tell them they've got to hold their form until the arrow hits. Used to be such a perfect way. Now we don't shoot 90 meters because it takes just an extra. It feels like it takes an age to get there. It's probably only an extra second and a half.
Yeah.
But shooting 90 and telling people to shoot, hold your form, boof, the arrow hits. It was a really good way of getting people to focus on their follow through. And I think with 90, it highlighted to me even more that outside you got rewarded for doing a good, clean, smooth shot rather than being super fixated on having your aim exactly in the middle. And I know that was always my hang up. That was always probably because left over from the compound, but it taught me that doing the smooth, constant flowing shot was always the key to getting them in the middle rather than making sure you'd aimed right at the X.
Yeah, because it's just so punishing, isn't it? Like if you...
Yeah. I was trying to focus on the positive, Ash. Come on.
Yeah, because if you like...
But yes, it destroys you if you have a bad loose.
Yeah, if you want to... You try and do that good timing, and for some reason, if you hang up on the timing and you don't keep that fluid shot, at 70, for us, we might shoot an 8, maybe a 7 or something. Most people at 70, if they do a shot where they kind of hold on to it a bit and it's not great, they might shoot a blue. I mean, if I shoot an 8 at 70 and I do that same mistake at 90, I mean, that's going in, that's a 3, that's a 4. That's not. Yeah. And then add a little bit of wind into that. If you do the mistake plus a bit of crosswind, I mean, you just get murdered. Absolutely.
But it was a good challenge, and it did help me focus on the flow, focus on the rhythm. It showed you what was important.
Because how did you find it coming from, because what I used to love doing in training was coming from 90 meters to 70 meters. And oh my God, I never enjoyed 70 so much as when I directly came from 90, moved the sight, and then those first two ends at 70, I mean, it feels like you're shooting 30 meters, what we were saying about the angle. It feels basically flat. Your sight just feels like it just goes on the middle and doesn't move. And then the arrow feels like it's super flat. It feels like you're shooting like Maurer and Espoli poundage. And I don't know, how did you find that? I just loved it going from 90 to 70. I was like, oh, this is easy suddenly. This is amazing.
It's always the only time, I'll be honest with you here, I'm going to put in the negative this time. If I'd had a great 90, I'd often then, the amount of time I'd feel that, and this is part of the problem, I'm sure, I would feel the dread of, I wonder, I've just finished 90 with a 52. I wonder what my first end at 70 will be. Oh, it was 52, was it? It was trying to capitalize on that performance. But then that was also part of the fun of the feat around was having those different distances, being able to respond, all right, I've got a good start. Can I build on that?
Yeah.
But they are different distances, do require different shooting, and each distance can bring out the good and bad. You can certainly, because they require different skills to get them in the middle. And I know that seems so counterintuitive, because you'd think, what would deliver a 10 at 18 meters? Why would that not deliver a 10 at 90? Surely it was dead in line.
Yeah.
They're not the same. They're not the same,
Do you think it works in reverse? So I completely agree. What works at 18 doesn't work at 50 or 70 or 90. But I think what works at 90 works all the way back to 18. I don't know what you think about that.
I don't know. I still have my doubts because I think at 18 you have to the aim is more important than it is at 90. Because I used to see a lot of good long distance shooters come indoors and they'd keep that same super quick flowing shot, and they'll just deliver a 578 and they'll just be in the middle of the pack. Whereas technically they destroyed me. Their technique looks so much better than mine, but they just didn't have that pinpoint aim
to really nail.
That's my opinion. So they're gonna be good, but they didn't have that push to get into the 590s by being just that little bit more still. Yeah, and that's the difference.
That's interesting. I think that's a fair point, though. And going back to what you said earlier about the score at 90, that reminded me of. We went to a European Grand Prix once, and one of my teammates, I can't remember exactly, it was either 317 or maybe 319 he shot at 90 metres.
Oh,
great score.
Delightful, yeah.
I think maybe even at the time it was like close to a European record. And then he shot like 315 at 70 metres. Which isn't like, because it kind of got a bit windy as well, to be fair. So like it wasn't like a completely fair comparison. But after a 319 at 90 metres, you're like, wow, this is game on today. Like I'm on, 13.
Well, I can tell you as a compound archer, I done a 90 metres. I done a 346 and followed that up with a 346. So there you go. I can be just as shameful as your friend there. That was a long time ago. That was
346 at 90 must feel pretty good though.
Compound bow, yeah. I want to say I finished with like 59 or something, and I was like, and then opened up 70 with a 54 or something. It was don't even. I've tried to block it out.
We'll gloss over that.
That's the fun of archery.
Yeah. But no, this has been a really good chat. So I think on that bombshell, that's probably a good place to end. But thank you everyone for watching. Let us know in the comments what we mentioned about the blank bail percentages. And hopefully you all found that useful, and we'll see you in the next video.
See you.